said in Matthew 28, he told the disciples, and as far as I can tell, perhaps it's the very last thing that he told them, that I am with you always, even to the end of the age. And that's something I've been thinking about a lot over the past couple weeks, that maybe I'm more thankful for that than almost anything else, that is a greater strength to me than quite a deal, because for one, there are times that you go through where you don't necessarily feel that. It doesn't feel true in your flesh. And then there are times that we go through that are very hot, where perhaps that is the only thing that can carry you through. The only thing that you can really cling to is that you know Jesus is with you, that it doesn't matter how bad things feel or how bad things look. If you know that he's with you, if you know that he hasn't left you, and at the end of it all, like Job said, I will stand and I will see him, then really there's nothing that we can't endure. There's nothing that we can't face and come through on the other side if he is with us. Turn to Daniel chapter 3. Thought about paraphrasing this, but there's things that I just didn't want to miss. I want to read through most of the story, starting in verse 8 here. We'll break in a little bit. We know that King Nebuchadnezzar, he set up this golden image, and the command has been issued that when the music plays, that everyone will bow down and worship. And we find in verse 8 that for this reason, at that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and brought charges against the Jews. And they responded and said to Nebuchadnezzar the king, O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery, and bagpipe, and all kinds of music is to fall down and worship the golden image. But whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into the midst of a furnace of blazing fire. And there are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the administration of the province of Babylon, namely Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these men, O king, have disregarded you, and they do not serve your gods or worship the golden image which you have set up. And then Nebuchadnezzar, in rage and anger, gave orders to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And then these men were brought before the king. And Nebuchadnezzar responded and said to them, Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image that I have set up? Now, if you are ready, at the moment you hear the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery, and bagpipe, and all kinds of music, to fall down and worship the image that I have made, very well. But if you do not worship, you will immediately be cast into the midst of a furnace of blazing fire. And what God is there who can deliver you out of my hands? And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to give you an answer concerning this matter. And I like how the King James translates that as, we are not careful to answer you in this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the furnace of blazing fire, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But even if he does not, let it be known to you, O king, that we are not going to serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. And then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with wrath. And I was reading that yesterday. It made me think that really the king here is a type of the devil, and that he's enraged that they won't worship him. He's enraged that they won't side with him. And I think that's just how it is with Satan and with us. When you look at the story of Job, the way he comes before the Lord and says, well, he would curse you. He wouldn't serve you the way he does. He would be on my side if you were not so good to him, if you didn't bless him with all of these things. And the Lord tells Satan, he's like, well, go for it. Do what you want to do. I know he's mine. And the devil comes and he takes all of his wealth, and then Job blesses the name of the Lord. He doesn't curse him. And then I'm sure that the devil is angry. I don't know how he comes before the Lord. I kind of picture him more calm than kind of displaying all of his emotions. I'm sure he seems confident and cocky. I mean, he's a master deceiver, so I imagine he's not ready to completely reveal how he feels, but then he wants to take more, and the Lord lets him take his family, and then still Job blesses the name of the Lord, and then he takes his health. And I can just kind of picture each time the devil seeks to steal someone from the Lord, each time he comes with an attack against the Lord's anointed, and we remain faithful, that it enrages him, that it angers him, and he comes back with more and more. And that's the thing where it's like, it's not just one trial that we go through. I mean, it's a lifetime of difficulty. And to me, it's never just one big thing. It's the way it was with Job, when it's the most difficult when the servant's still reporting to you that this amount of your wealth has disappeared and this property has been stolen. And while he's still speaking, another one comes. And while he's still speaking, another one comes and tells him his family is dead. And then shortly after that, his health is taken. It's this accumulation of all of these attacks that the devil brings. And I guess we can be glad for that, because if that means that he's so angry with us for being faithful to the Lord that he'll keep on coming, then that's a good thing. It says Nebuchadnezzar was filled with wrath, and his facial expression was altered toward Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And he answered by giving orders to heat the furnace 7 times more than it was usually heated. And he commanded certain valiant warriors who were in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in order to cast them into the furnace of blazing fire. And then these men were tied up in their trousers, their coats, their caps, and their other clothes, and were cast into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire. For this reason, because the king's command was urgent and the furnace had been made extremely hot, the flame of the fire slew the men who carried them up. But these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire, still tied up. I think this is poignant because, yeah, the Lord can deliver you from anything, but I think far more often than not, we get to fall into the fire. We get to be delivered through it, not from it. And then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astounded and stood up in haste, and he said to his high officials, "Was it not 3 men we cast bound into the midst of the fire?" And they replied to the king, "Certainly, O king." And he said, "Look, I see 4 men loosed and walking about in the midst of the fire without harm, and the appearance of the 4th is like the son of the gods." And that's what really struck me this week in thinking about this, is that the fire can be as hot as the devil wants to make it, but Jesus is always right there, walking through it, right with us. And, I say this a lot, but I find it to be increasingly true over and over, that there's nothing that's better than that. There's nothing better than being near to the Lord. I wouldn't trade any difficult thing that we have to go through for an easier time if it meant trading how near the Lord is in the difficulty, because typically, in my experience at least, you don't look for him as intensely. You don't feel him as closely when you're on a mountaintop and then everything is easy. Like when you're not having to worry about anything or be stressed or taxed, then you just don't seek him as diligently, as fervently. To our shame, maybe, but that's just something that makes every trial so valuable, because, yeah, there are times where the Lord remains silent and he doesn't answer, and maybe it feels like he's far off, but I think the more fervently you seek him in the hottest of environments, the more often maybe your prayers aren't answered right away. Maybe the situation doesn't go away near as quickly as you would hope for, but he ministers to you in those moments. And it's far more precious than anything I can think of when you're at the end of your rope, where I can feel it like it's a physical strain. Like it's like when you're working out and you've hit a wall and you've lifted every rep you can do, and in the last rep, I mean, you feel that you can't get it up. Like I feel that mentally and emotionally and spiritually sometimes when it's one thing added up after the other, and it feels tangible to me that I've reached the end of what I am, of everything that I can muster, and then you just, all of you is poured out, like Paul said, like a drink offering, and that's when you just have to have the Lord. You have to have his nearness. We'll go ahead and turn to 1 Peter chapter 4. Verse 12. It says, "Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal among you." And that word fiery, I looked it up this morning. It literally means like a burning, as in purifying, just like it is with metals, is what a fiery ordeal is. I believe someone probably referenced it recently, maybe it was last week in the sermon, with the way the silversmith sits, and he just watches so carefully over the heat of the fire, and then his eyes are just fixed on that precious metal, and how the Lord is with us in that yeah, I think often we're supposed to be brought to the point to where we feel it's too much and we cannot handle anymore. That's the point, I think. But he knows. He knows exactly what we can handle, and just knowing that he's always faithful and his word is true, and that when he says that I won't let anything come upon you. I won't let this fire burn you. I'm going to let it purify you, but I won't let it burn you. So don't be surprised at the fiery ordeal which comes upon you for your testing, as though some strange thing were happening to you. But to the degree that you share the sufferings of Christ. I like that it uses the word share, because he is right there alongside with us. I mean, he shares in every moment where we help to fill up the suffering, that remains to be suffered. Keep on rejoicing, so that also at the revelation of his glory you may rejoice with exultation. And if you are reviled in the name of Christ, you are blessed, because the Spirit of glory and of God rests on you. And I'm just so thankful when we can know that, it says we suffer as a Christian. If you can look at your life and you know that you're not suffering like it says as, an evildoer, a thief, or a murderer. We're not talking about making mistakes, but we know that we're in the Lord. We suffer as one of his, no matter what it is. I used to read this a long time ago and think that we had to be martyred or tortured for your faith, for this to apply to you, but that's not all that it is. You suffer in the name of Christ. So as a Christian, no matter what you suffer, whether it's martyrdom or it's losing a job or someone close to you or your health, it just put your trial on it, whatever it is that has you feeling like it's all you can handle. Because of that, we know the Spirit of glory and of God rests on us. Turn to Psalm 73. Starting in verse 21. When my heart was embittered and I was pierced within, then I was senseless and ignorant. I was like a beast before you. Earlier in the psalm, Asaph here talks about how he's envious of the arrogant and his feet are close to stumbling, and he looks at the wicked and how they do whatever they want. They please the flesh and they just live it up, and then nothing goes wrong for them. Everything is good with them. He doesn't see their end. And so I like that it includes this, because for me at least, there can be a trial that you go through that perhaps you feel like you made a mistake that kind of caused something in this, and that maybe you have a part to play in the fact that it's difficult right now. But it says, nevertheless, I am continually with you. Even though my heart was embittered and I was pierced within, I am continually with you. You have taken hold of my right hand, and with your counsel you will guide me, and afterwards receive me to glory. Whom have I in heaven but you, and besides you I desire nothing on earth. I think that's something valuable that trials bring, is you realize nothing here, nothing physical is worth attaining, it's worth pursuing. Besides you, I desire nothing on earth. My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart. My flesh and my heart may fail. I know that I've felt that. I'm sure that all of you have, where you come to the end of yourself and you know that anything in you, any strength that you have is gone, that you have nothing left to persevere with in and of yourself, but that God has to be the strength of your heart and my portion forever. For behold, those who are far from you will perish, and you have destroyed all those who are unfaithful to you. But as for me, the nearness of God is my good. I have made the Lord God my refuge, that I may tell of all your works. And quickly we'll hurry through over to Psalm 23. And we don't have time to go into it, but I think you all have probably seen, I don't know, a year or two ago, something like that, the video on how this man went to Israel and he actually watched shepherds. And the picture here in Psalm 23 is not like this idyllic green pastures with babbling brooks that we tend to think of, but it's a much more barren, treacherous, difficult place the sheep are led through, where it says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." See, that's poignant when you realize you're in a situation that looks like you're going to want, but you know that he's your shepherd and you shall not. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul, and he guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, it's also translated valley of deep darkness, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies, and you have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and loving kindness will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. It's like David says in Psalm 84, I believe it is, where I would rather stand just outside at the threshold of the house of my God, which isn't what we have to do. We get to dwell in the house. And he says that he fear no evil, for he knows the Lord is with him. And we'll close in Psalm 139. Just read a few verses here. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You understand my thought from afar. You scrutinize my path and my lying down, and are intimately acquainted with all my ways. Even before there is a word on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it all. You have enclosed me behind and before, and laid your hand upon me. I think about this a lot when I'm in the midst of something that feels too difficult to bear, that the Lord has enclosed us. He understands us in a way that he understands our heart better than we do. When we're at the end of ourselves, he knows what that feels like. He knows what it is that's going on with us, and the way he encloses us in him, I think about it like an all-encompassing hug, where it's like you're a small child and it's your dad and he's so much larger than you, and you can be wrapped up in him, and you know that in his arms you're safe, that everything will be okay. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is too high. I cannot attain to it. Where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, behold, you are there. If I take the wings of the dawn, if I dwell in the remotest part of the sea, even there your hand will lead me, and your right hand will lay hold of me. I love that it's so descriptive. Like, you could go down to hell or to the highest heaven. It doesn't matter how tight a spot it is, the Lord, he's right there. And if I say, surely the darkness will overwhelm me, And surely we've all felt that, where everything just feels too dark, and it feels like it will conquer us, is what it feels like. That's kind of what the word overwhelm means, that it will break you. And the light around me will be night, but even the darkness is not dark to you, and the night is as bright as the day. Darkness and light are alike to you. So it doesn't matter how dark it feels to us when we know that the Lord is light, that it's nothing to him. Verse 17, how precious also are your thoughts to me, O God. How vast is the sum of them. If I should count them, they would outnumber the sand. And when I am awake, I am still with you. Hallelujah.